Seeds of doubt. Aditi Sharma gently placed the gold-rimmed teacups on the marble counter, careful not to make a sound. Her husband Vikram was on another important call, pacing the length of their penthouse apartment with the confidence that had discroned as that had become his signature in the 3 years since his tech company had taken off. From the kitchen, she could see only his silhouette against the Mumbai skyline, tall, impeccably dressed, gesturing with the easy authority of a man who had grown. Comfortable giving orders? Of course, Mr. Malhotra. Absolute pleasure. We'll finalize everything at the gala next week, Vikram said, his voice carrying the polished accent he had cultivated since their move from Dehradun. Ended the call with a satisfied sigh, then turned to find Aditi. Tea, she offered with a smile. Vikram checked his watch. Not time, Rahul is picking me up in 5. Board meeting ran late, and now we've got dinner with investors. He barely looked at her as he adjusted his tie. I made your favorite masala chai, like my mother used to make, Adia said. A small offering from a world that seemed increasingly distant. Aditi Ipram's tone shifted to one she recognized, gentle but impatient, as if explaining something to a child. I'm meeting with people who run billion-dollar funds. I can't show up smelling like cardamom. He softened slightly at her expression. Save it for tomorrow, okay? Didi nodded, wondering when her husband had started finding comfort embarrassing. When they'd married 7 years ago, Vikram had been a junior programmer with big dreams. And she, a textile designer with a degree from a small art school. They'd sit on their tiny balcony drinking her spiced tea, planning futures that seemed wonderfully distant. Now, those futures had arrived, but not as she had imagined. The doorbell rang, and Vikram grabbed his jacket. Rahul's here. Don't wait. Up! After he left, Aditi wandered through their expansive apartment. Everything was new, selected by the interior designer Vikram had hired sleek. Modern, and nothing like the warm, textured spaces she had always dreamed of creating. Her small workroom, once central to their old apartment, had been relegated to a corner of the guest bedroom. Her loom and fabrics stored neatly out of sight. Her phone chimed with a message from Vikram. Don't forget, next Saturday is the Emerging Tech Charity Gala. Priya will send a stylist. Very important night for us, Aditi sighed, remembering the last event when Vikram had winced at her self-designed outfit. It looks homemade, he'd whispered, though once he'd praised her creations as authentically artistic. Now her handwork was an embarrassment to a man who only respected designer labels. The next morning, as Aditi sorted through fabric samples for a small freelance project, her only remaining connection to her design work, she noticed Vikram's phone light up on the counter. A notification appeared, a message from someone named Nisha. Missing you already. Lunch was amazing. Can't wait to see what you're wearing. To the gala, Aditi's hand froze above the silks. She should look away. She didn't. Another message followed. She's not coming, is she? You promised this time it would be just us. The phone locked itself, the messages disappearing like smoke. Aditi sat down slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. All the small changes in Vikram, the late nights, the weekend emergencies. The growing distance suddenly clicked into a clear picture. That evening, when Vikram returned home, Aditi said nothing about the messages. Instead, she asked, Do you ever miss how things used to be when we were just starting out? Vikram looked up from his laptop, momentarily surprised by the question. Miss, struggling to pay rent? Not particularly, he laughed. I meant us. We used to be together. Vikram's expression softened slightly. We've grown up, Aditi. This is what success looks like. He gestured around them. Everything I've built is for us. Is it? She asked quietly. Something flickered across his face, guilt perhaps, or annoyance at being questioned. I've got a call with California in 10 minutes, he said, effectively ending the conversation as Aditi watched him retreat to his home. Office, she realized with sudden clarity that the distance between them wasn't measured in feet or even in lifestyle changes. It was the growing space between who they had been and who they were becoming in that space. Other people had begun to fit. The gala was a week away. He touched the wedding band on her finger, wondering if by then she would find the courage to ask about Nisha, or if perhaps A different kind of courage was needed altogether. Frost and Falling, the emerging tech charity gala, transformed the historic Oberoi Ballroom into a futuristic wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over Mumbai's elite tech moguls. Venture capitalists and Bollywood celebrities mingled in an atmosphere thick with perfume and ambition. Aditi stood at the entrance. Feeling like an imposter despite the designer gown, the stylist had selected a sleek black number that felt nothing like her. There you are, Vikram appeared. Beside her, handsome in his tuxedo. Remember, the Malhotras are key investors. And Deepak Singhania from Venture East will be here. I need you to be charming. His hand pressed against her lower back, guiding her forward with practiced ease. I saw your messages from Nisha, Aditi said quietly, the words slipping out before she could reconsider. Vikram's step faltered almost imperceptibly. Not now, Aditi. We have people waiting. When then? She asked, but he was already leading her toward a group of men in expensive suits, his social smile firmly in place. Vikram Sharma, called out a silver-haired man. The man of the hour. Mr. Malhotra. Such an honor, Vikram replied, shaking hands. May I introduce my wife, Aditi? The men nodded politely at Aditi before immediately returning to their conversation about investment rounds and market disruption. She stood quietly beside Vikram, playing her part as the supportive spouse, while her mind raced with unanswered questions. 20 minutes into the evening, Aditi excused herself to find the restroom. As she crossed the ballroom, she noticed a striking woman in a crimson dress approaching Vikram. Even from a distance, Aditi could see the familiarity in how they leaned toward each other. How Vikram's hand lingered slightly too long on her arm. Nisha, in the restroom. Aditi splashed cool water on her wrists, trying to calm her racing heart. You're stronger than this, she whispered to her reflection. When she returned to the ballroom, she spotted Vikram deep in conversation with a group that now included Nisha, rather than join them. Aditi approached the bar and ordered a sparkling water. Not drinking tonight? Asked a woman who had sidled up beside her. Her elegant sari was adorned with intricate embroidery that immediately caught Aditi's designer eye. Just pacing myself, Aditi replied with a small smile. Smart. I'm Jaya Rathor. The woman introduced herself, fashion editor at Style Today. Aditi Sharma, as in Vikram Sharma's wife. Jaya raised an eyebrow. I've been trying to get an interview with him for our Innovators issue. That would be him, Aditi confirmed, glancing across the room where Vikram was now laughing at something Nisha had said. Your husband has become quite the celebrity in tech circles, Jaya remarked. Though I must say, I'm more interested in that stunning embroidery sketch I saw on your Instagram last month. The peacock motif was extraordinary. Aditi looked at her in surprise. You follow my work? I follow talent, Jaya said simply. The industry needs more designers who understand traditional craftsmanship, should be creating, not just attending these events as someone's plus one. Before Aditi could respond, a commotion near the center of the ballroom caught their attention. Vikram was announcing a special presentation about his company's charitable initiative. The crowd gathered around. Aditi moved closer out of obligation. As Vikram spoke eloquently about digital literacy in rural India, Aditi found herself standing near Nisha and a group of women who were clearly part of her social circle. That's her, she overheard Nisha whisper to a friend. The wife, still hanging on despite the obvious. The friend snickered. What does he see in her? She looks like she belongs in a classroom in some village, not here. Vikram says she's from some small town and still acts like it. Sweet but simple. He needs someone who understands this world. Someone like you, the friend replied with a knowing smile. Aditi felt the blood drain from her face. It wasn't just an affair. Vikram had been talking about her, mocking her background, her simplicity. The room suddenly felt too warm, the lights too bright, as the presentation ended to applause. Vikram called out, and I'd like to thank my supportive wife, Aditi. Where are you, darling? Spotlight swept the room, finding her frozen between Nisha's group and the main crowd. Everyone turned to look at her, including Nisha, whose crimson lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Perhaps she'd like to say a few words about how proud she is, someone suggested. Vikram's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Oh, Aditi isn't one for public speaking, he said with a laugh that others joined. She prefers to support from behind the scenes, don't you, dear? In that moment, with hundreds of eyes on her, Aditi realized the truth. She had become invisible in her own life. A prop in Vikram's success story, someone to be tolerated but not heard. With quiet dignity, she stepped forward. Actually, I would like to say something. A surprised murmur ran through the crowd. Vikram's smile became fixed. I am proud, Aditi said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Proud of remembering who I am and where I come from. Thank you all for this illuminating evening. She turned and walked steadily toward the exit, ignoring Vikram calling her name. Outside, the cool night air rushed against her flushed face. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vikram. What are you doing? Get back inside now. Instead, Aditi hailed a taxi. Where to, madam? The driver asked. She thought of their penthouse apartment, filled with things that weren't hers, a life that no longer fit. Juhu Beach, she said. Her friend Divya lived there, the one friend Vikram had deemed a bohemian, for their new social circle. As the taxi pulled away from the glittering hotel, Aditi removed her wedding ring and placed it in her clutch. The weight she'd felt pressing on her chest for months began to lift. She had lost her marriage tonight, but perhaps she had found something more valuable, herself by morning. She would need to make difficult decisions about her future, but for now, watching the city lights blur past the window, Aditi felt something unexpected amid the pain, a flicker of possibility. Like a seed long dormant finally feeling the promise of rain. Hidden roots, you can stay as long as you need, Divya said, setting down a steaming cup of chai beside Aditi, who sat cross-legged on the guest bed, surrounded by sketchbooks and fabric swatches. 3 weeks had passed since the gala, and Aditi had yet to return to the penthouse, except once to collect her personal belongings while Vikram was away on business. I can't thank you enough, Aditi replied, looking up from her sketching. Divya's beachside apartment was modest compared to the luxury she'd grown accustomed to, but its walls of books, mismatched furniture, and the constant sound of waves created a sanctuary that felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived in years. Please, Divya waved dismissively. You're bringing life back to this place, and to yourself. She gestured toward the explosion of creativity scattered across the room, drawings, textile samples, and the small loom Aditi had retrieved from storage. The divorce papers had arrived yesterday, along with a settlement offer that Aditi's lawyer described as generous but calculating, enough to maintain appearances, but not enough for true independence. Vikram clearly expected her to falter and return. 3 missed calls from him remained unanswered on her phone. Jaya from Style Today called again, Divya mentioned casually. She's persistent about featuring your work. Aditi nodded, tracing her fingers over the intricate pattern she'd been developing, temporary. Designs inspired by the handloom traditions her grandmother had taught her. After their conversation at the gala, Jaya had tracked down Aditi's number, convinced there was an opportunity for a new designer voice in the industry. I'm not ready yet, Aditi said. These designs are still forming. Besides, who would take me seriously? I've never even had my own collection. Jaya would, Divya replied, sitting beside her, and so would I. She picked up one of Aditi's sketches, a flowing garment that incorporated traditional embroidery techniques with modern silhouettes. This isn't just beautiful, Adi. It's authentic in a way that most fashion isn't anymore. A notification appeared on Aditi's tablet, a news alert featuring Vikram at a tech conference, Nisha prominently by his side. The caption read, Tech Innovator. Vikram Sharma with girlfriend Nisha Kapoor at Digital Summit. Well, Divya said dryly, he certainly didn't waste time making things official. Aditi felt a strange detachment looking at the image. The hurt was still there, but duller now, like a bruise healing. They deserve each other, she said quietly. All surface, no substance, unlike these. Divya tapped Aditi's sketchbook. What will you call them? Aditi hesitated, then said, I've been thinking about Doreen Earth, because it's about returning to roots while growing something new. Perfect, Divya declared. Now call Jaya back. You don't need to be completely ready to begin. The next morning, Aditi met Jaya at a small cafe overlooking the Arabian Sea. Wind carried salt spray and possibility. She nervously spread her portfolio across the table. "These are preliminary," Aditi explained, as Jaya examined each sketch with focused intensity. "I'm still sourcing ethical producers for the textiles." "That's exactly what makes this special," Jaya replied, looking up.
Ow.
"You're creating a story, not just clothes. The fashion industry is drowning in mass production. We need voices like yours." "I don't have backing," Aditi admitted. "The divorce settlement will give me enough to start small, but let me worry about that," Jaya interrupted. "My column next month will feature emerging designers with conscience. You'll be the centerpiece. I know investors who are hungry for sustainable fashion with cultural roots." 2 days later, Aditi signed the lease on a tiny studio space in an arts district of Mumbai. The room was nothing like the sleek offices of Vikram's tech company. But as sunlight streamed through its large windows onto the wooden floors, Aditi felt a sense of rightness that had eluded her for years. She had just finished setting up her loom when her phone rang Vikram's number. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. Finally, his voice came through, familiar yet strange. "We need to talk about the settlement." "My lawyer is handling everything," Aditi replied evenly. "This isn't about lawyers," Vikram's tone softened, to the one he'd always used when trying to persuade her. "I miss you, Aditi. Things with Nish. ... It's complicated. But you and I have history." "History isn't enough," Aditi said, surprising herself with her calmness. "Neither is comfort or convenience." "Is this about the money? Because we can renegotiate?" "No," she interrupted. "It's about respect. Something I finally have for myself." A long pause followed. "The apartment feels empty without your things," he finally said, an unexpected vulnerability in his voice. "Then perhaps you should fill it with something meaningful," Aditi replied. "Goodbye, Vikram." After ending the call, Aditi turned to the loom before her. The warp threads were stretched tight, waiting for her to begin weaving. Her grandmother had taught her that a weaver must approach their work with intention. Each thread matters. Each choice affects the whole. Her marriage had unraveled, but here she could create something new. Thread by thread. That evening, Jaya invited Aditi to a small industry dinner. "Just a few designers and buyers," she had said. "No pressure, just connections." The restaurant was intimate, with fairy lights strung across an open courtyard. As Aditi entered, she immediately recognized several prominent figures from the fashion world. Anxiety fluttered in her stomach, but she straightened her shoulders and moved forward. "Everyone, this is Aditi Sharma, the designer I've been telling you about," Jaya announced. "Aditi, meet Rohan Mehra. He sources textiles for several ethical brands." A tall man with kind eyes extended his hand. "Jaya showed me your concepts. The integration of ikat techniques with contemporary design is fascinating." "Thank you," Aditi replied, surprised by his specific knowledge of her work. Throughout dinner, Aditi found herself engaged in conversations about sustainable production, artisan partnerships, and design philosophy. These people spoke her language, valued what she valued. When she described her vision for Dyrene, they listened with genuine interest. "The fashion industry needs to reconnect with its roots," Rohan said during a discussion about fast fashion. "Not as nostalgia, but as a path forward. Your approach could help bridge that gap." As the evening ended, Rohan handed Aditi his card. "I have connections with a women's cooperative in Gujarat that still practices traditional weaving. They're looking for designers who understand their craft. Call me if you're interested." Walking home along the beach, Aditi felt something taking root inside her. Not just hope, but certainty. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in years, it was truly hers. Meanwhile, across the city in a trendy nightclub, Vikram sat beside Nisha, surrounded by the glittering crowd he had worked so hard to join. As Nisha posed for yet another social media photo, complaining about the lighting he found himself staring into, his drink, remembering the quiet strength in Aditi's voice when she had said goodbye. The victory he had expected to feel at securing Nisha beautiful, connected, sophisticated Nisha felt strangely hollow. "Are you even listening?" Nisha snapped, pulling him back to the present. I said we need to make an appearance at the Singania. Launch next week. Everyone who matters will be there. Of course, Vikram replied automatically, raising his glass in a toast while wondering, for the first time, what exactly it was he had won. First blossoms, 6 months passed like the turning of seasons. Spring brought renewal, and summer arrived with unexpected abundance for Doreen. What had begun as Aditi's small collection of hand-woven pieces had blossomed into a growing enterprise, occupying not just the tiny studio she had first rented, but now an airy workshop where 5 artisans worked alongside her. The morning light filtered through the large windows, catching dust motes that danced above the looms. Aditi moved between workstations, checking the progress of a shawl being woven with naturally dyed silk threads in gradients of indigo and ochre. "Perfect tension, Lakshmi," she said to the young weaver, whose hands moved with practiced precision. "The transition between colors is seamless." Lakshmi smiled, her fingers never pausing their rhythmic dance. "My grandmother would be proud to see these old techniques being valued again." This was the heart of Doreen, not just creating beautiful garments, but preserving traditions that were vanishing in the rush toward mass production. Each piece told a story of the hands that crafted it, the earth that provided the dyes, the heritage that informed the designs. A deity, called Rohan, entering the workshop with a tablet in hand. In the months since their first meeting, he had become more than a business connection. He was Doreen's most passionate advocate. Using his extensive network to connect Aditi with ethical suppliers and artisan communities across India. "You need to see this." He held up the tablet, displaying the latest digital issue of Style Today. There, it's prominently featured in Jaya's column. It's a photograph of a Bollywood actress wearing one of Aditi's signature shawls at a film festival. In London, the caption read, "Sustainable Luxury. Star chooses emerging designer Aditi Sharma's Doreen creation for global spotlight." "It's already generating orders," Rohan said excitedly. The website had over 1,000 visitors this morning. Alone, Aditi took the tablet, hardly believing what she was seeing. Just months ago, she had been silenced at a gala, made to feel invisible. Now her work was being celebrated on an international stage. "We'll need to increase production," she said, mind already calculating possibilities, but without compromising quality or ethics. "I've been thinking about that," Rohan replied, pulling up a chair beside her desk. "There's a cooperative in Rajasthan, women who've been doing bandhani, tie-dye for generations, but struggling to find markets. They could create fabric exclusively for Doreen, following your designs but using their traditional methods." As they discussed logistics, Aditi noticed how Rohan's eyes crinkled when he smiled, how he leaned forward slightly when she spoke, giving her his complete attention. Unlike Vikram, who had always seemed to be looking over her shoulder for someone. More important, Rohan's focus was undivided. It was refreshing, though Aditi had cautiously kept their relationship strictly professional. That evening, after the artisans had gone home, Aditi stayed late finalizing designs for the autumn collection. A soft knock at the door surprised her. "Still working?" Rohan asked, stepping inside with 2 paper bags. "I brought dinner. Thought you might be forgetting to eat again." "You didn't have to do that," Aditi said, though her stomach growled appreciatively at the aroma of cardamom and cumin that filled the room. "I wanted to," he replied simply, unpacking containers of fragrant biryani onto her desk. "Besides, I have news." As they ate, Rohan explained that a major sustainable fashion showcase had a last-minute opening, merging voices and ethical luxury. Was scheduled for the following month at the National Gallery. "They want Doreen," he said. "It's not just a piece or two. They're offering a full segment. 10 minutes on the runway, Aditi." She nearly choked on her biryani. "A month? That's impossible. We'd need at least 20 complete looks, accessories, coordination with models, all manageable," Rohan countered confidently. The cooperative in Rajasthan can prioritize our order. KA's already offered to help with styling, and He hesitated. "I've been holding something back." Aditi raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I have a silent investor who's been interested in Doreen since I first mentioned your work," Rohan admitted. They've been waiting for the right moment to approach you formally. An investor? Aditi set down her fork. After Vikram, she was wary of entanglements that might compromise her independence. Who? Me? Rohan said quietly. Well, partly. Have family money that's been sitting in conventional investments for years. When I met you, I realized this was something worth believing in, not just as a business, but as a movement. Aditi stared at him, processing this revelation. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted you to see what you could build on your own first, he explained. And because I didn't want my investment to complicate other feelings I might have. The air between them shifted, charged with unspoken possibilities. Rohan Aditi began, but he gently interrupted. You don't need to respond to that part, he said with a small smile. The investment offer stands regardless. As for the rest, there's no rush. You've been rebuilding your life, finding your voice. I respect that journey. His consideration touched her deeply. Where Vikram had pushed and pulled to mold her into his vision, Rohan simply offered support for hers. I'll consider the investment, she said carefully, and the showcase. But we'll need to be clear about creative control. Wouldn't have it any other way? Rohan grinned. Your vision is what makes Doreen special. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity. The workshop hummed day and night as the collection took shape. Aditi named it UDBHAV, emergence inspired by plants breaking through soil toward sunlight. Each garment combined traditional techniques with contemporary sensibilities. Saris with unexpected draping. Jackets embellished with hand embroidery that told stories of resilience. Dresses that moved like water. 3 days before the showcase, as Aditi was making final adjustments to a particularly intricate piece, Divya burst into the workshop waving. Her phone? Have you seen this? She demanded, thrusting the screen toward a DITI. It was an article about Vikram's company facing investor scrutiny after disappointing product launches and reports of toxic workplace culture. The photograph showed him looking haggard, Nisha noticeably absent from his side. Apparently the golden couple has split, Divya added. Rumor has it she's already moved on to a film producer. Aditi studied the image of her ex-husband. 6 months ago, this news might have brought satisfaction or vindication. Now she felt only a detached compassion. Success built on superficiality rarely lasted. I hope he finds his way, she said simply, returning to her work. That's it? Divya looked disappointed. No, serves him right. Aditi smiled, threading a needle with gold silk. The best response to disrespect isn't revenge, it's creating something beautiful that wouldn't exist otherwise. On the evening of the showcase, the National Gallery transformed into a celebration of conscious fashion. Designers from across the country presented collections that honored heritage while embracing innovation. Backstage was controlled chaos. As models were dressed, stylists made final touches. Photographers captured behind-the-scenes moments. A deity stood amid it all, giving last-minute instructions while Rohan handled logistical crises with calm efficiency. When a zipper broke, 5 minutes before Doreen's segment, he appeared with a replacement so quickly it seemed magical. Nervous? He asked, helping her secure a wayward hairpin on a model's elaborate updo. Strangely, no, Aditi replied, realizing it was true. This feels right, like everything has been leading here. The music changed, signaling Darini's turn. As the first model stepped onto the runway in a flowing ensemble of hand-woven khadi cotton with subtle embroidery depicting monsoon clouds, the audience fell momentarily silent before erupting in appreciative murmurs. From the wings, Aditi watched. As her vision materialized before an audience of industry leaders, media, and fashion enthusiasts, each piece told part of her story, not the pain of betrayal, but the joy of rediscovery. The final look, a contemporary lehenga in deep crimson with gold threadwork depicting a woman emerging from lotus petals, received spontaneous applause. As Aditi stepped out for the designer's acknowledgement, the applause grew thunderous. The front row Jaya beamed with pride. Beside her sat magazine editors, buyers from ethical boutiques, and unexpectedly Vikram. Their eyes met briefly across the runway. Something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of how far they had traveled from who they once were. He nodded slightly, a gesture that might have been respect or regret. Adia acknowledged it with the smallest incline of her head before turning her attention back to the audience that was celebrating not who she was married to, but what she had created. Backstage after the show, as congratulations poured in, and Adia still poured in, and Adia still acknowledged it, when the still acknowledged it with the smallest incline of her head before turning her attention back to the audience that was celebrating not what Sil, but what she had created. The Sil, back to Sil. Apta said, the meld. Sil, to a Sil. The one to Sil. Her Wenel Vental umpanded. Buyers lined up to place orders. Rohan appeared at her side with a bouquet of wildflowers, not the standard roses, but vibrant local blooms gathered from a small farm outside the city. Perfect metaphor for your work, he said, presenting them to her. Beautiful, not despite their wildness, but because of it. Aditi accepted the flowers, their fragrance mingling with the heady scent of success. Thank you, she said, meaning, not just for the flowers, but for believing in her vision when it was merely sketches and dreams. Dinner to celebrate, he asked. There's a quiet place near the water. As they slipped away from the buzzing crowd, Aditi felt something unfurling inside, her not. The desperate need for validation she had once known, but the gentle certainty of standing firmly in her own light, ready at last to share it. Asterisk, full bloom one. Year after the National Gallery showcase, Doreen had blossomed from a promising newcomer to a recognized name in sustainable luxury. What began in a tiny studio now occupied a renovated textile mill in Mumbai's arts district, a space where creativity and tradition conversed in harmony. Skylights flooded the main workshop with natural light while the brick walls displayed black and white photographs documenting India's rich textile heritage. Aditi walked through the space, taking in the rhythmic clacking of looms, the whispered conversations of artisans, and the subtle fragrance of natural dyes. 40 craftspeople now worked under the Doreen banner, each bringing generations of knowledge to contemporary designs. In a year of remarkable growth, this was what made a DIT proudest, not the magazine features or celebrity clients, but the revival of endangered crafts and the dignified employment of skilled hands. The invitations for the anniversary collection. Launch arrived, announced Prisha, Aditi's assistant, presenting an elegant card made from handmade paper embedded with wildflower seeds. Plant after reading was embossed in subtle gold lettering beneath the Doreen logo, a lotus emerging from rippled water. Their perfect Aditi nodded approvingly. Has the guest list been finalized? It's awaiting your approval on the last. Few names, Prisha replied, and Rohan called. He's secured the heritage building for the venue. The restoration work will be completed next week. The mention of Rohan brought a smile to Aditi's face. Their relationship had evolved organically over the past year, deepening from professional respect to friendship and gradually blossoming into love. Unlike her relationship with Vikram, built on youthful dreams and later maintained through compromise, her connection with Rohan was rooted in mutual admiration and shared values. He supported her vision without trying to claim it, celebrated her success without seeking credit. The anniversary collection, titled Samsara, Cycle of Renewal, represented Aditi's most personal work yet. Each piece incorporated elements from different chapters of her journey, textiles inspired by her childhood in Dehradun, silhouettes that honored her grandmother's teachings, and innovative techniques developed during Dherani's first year. The collection would debut at a special exhibition where fashion, art, and social impact would converge in a celebration of conscious creativity. That evening, Aditi and Rohan walked along Juhu Beach, the same shore where she had once sought refuge. In her darkest moments, the setting sun painted the water in shades of amber and rose, mirroring the colors in her upcoming collection. I received an interesting call today, Rohan said, his fingers interlaced with hers. From Vikram Sharma. Kiti stopped walking. Vikram. What did he want? To be invited to the anniversary event, Rohan replied, watching her reaction carefully. He mentioned he's been following Dherani's success. A year ago, this news might have unsettled her. Now Aditi felt only mild surprise. After his company's struggles and his public separation from Nisha, Vikram had retreated from the spotlight to rebuild his business on more substantial foundations. Occasional news items suggested he was rediscovering the innovative spirit that had first driven his success before status and appearances became his focus. "Do you want him there?" Rohan asked, his tone free of judgment. Aditi considered the question seriously. "Yes," she decided. "Not for closure or validation, I've found those myself. But because every part of my journey has led to this moment, including the painful chapters." Rohan squeezed her hand gently. "I've always admired how you transform difficulty into beauty. It's the essence of Doreen." The night of the anniversary exhibition arrived with an atmosphere of anticipation. The Venua restored colonial-era building with soaring ceilings and intricate architectural details had been transformed. Instead of a traditional runway, the collection was presented as living art installations throughout the space. Models stood on pedestals like modern sculptures, while artisans demonstrated traditional techniques at stations between them. Video projections showcased the stories of the craftspeople behind each garment, from elderly master weavers to young apprentices preserving dying arts. Guests moved through the exhibition at their own pace, experiencing the collection as a journey rather than a spectacle. Fashion critics mingled with environmental activists. Bollywood celebrities conversed with village artisans. International buyers exchanged cards with local designers. Exactly the diverse ecosystem Adia had envisioned. Near a display of naturally dyed textiles hanging like colorful waterfalls from ceiling to floor, a deity spotted Vikram. He stood alone, studying the information about the women's cooperative in Gujarat that had created the fabrics. He looked different, his designer suit replaced by more relaxed attire, his expression more contemplative than calculating. When he turned and saw her, a moment of recognition passed between them. Not the charged tension of former lovers, but the quiet acknowledgement of two people who had once shared a path before finding their separate ways. "Aditi," he greeted her, his voice lacking its former polished edge. "This is extraordinary, truly." "Thank you," she replied simply. "I'm glad you could come." "I wouldn't have missed it," Vikram said. "I've been following your work, the Artisan Revival Initiative, the zero-waste production methods. It's revolutionary, not revolutionary." A DIT corrected gently. "Evolutionary. These traditions have always been here. We just stopped valuing them." Vikram nodded, seeming to absorb this. "I've been relearning that lesson myself. After everything collapsed last year, the relationship with Nisha, the company culture problems, I had to strip away the superficial success and remember why I started building in the first place." "And did you indeed?" you asked, genuinely curious. "Getting there," he admitted. "My new project focuses on tech solutions for traditional craft sectors, connecting artisans directly to global markets without middlemen." He hesitated, then added, "Your success with Doreen was part of what inspired the pivot." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. He had once dismissed her connection to tradition as simplistic, only to later find value in it himself. "Life has a way of completing circles," Aditi observed without bitterness. "It does," Vikram agreed. After a pause, he added, "I owe you an apology, Aditi, for how I treated you, for what I said about you to others. You deserved better." "I found better," she replied, her eyes drifting to where Rohan stood across the room.
"I'll deep in conversation with a group of international sustainability experts."
As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and smiled warmly. Vikram followed her glance and nodded in understanding. "He seems like someone who sees you clearly." "He does," Aditi confirmed. "But more importantly, I've learned to see myself clearly." There. Conversation was interrupted as Jaya approached, elegant in a Doreen jacket from the previous collection. "Aditi, the Times fashion editor is asking for you. And the Minister of Textiles just arrived." "I should go," Aditi said to Vikram. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for including me," he replied. "And did Etchem happy for you? Truly." As Etchini moved through her exhibition, greeting guests and explaining design elements, she felt a profound sense of wholeness. The journey from being silenced at a gala to creating this space where diverse voices were celebrated hadn't been easy. But each challenge had added texture and depth to her life's fabric. Later that evening, As the event reached its pinnacle, Edity stood on a small platform to address the gathered crowd. Cameras flashed and voices hushed as she prepared to speak. Darini began as a personal journey of rediscovery, she began, her voice clear and confident. But it has grown into something much larger, conversation between past and future, tradition and innovation, artisan and audience. She gestured to the craftspeople who stood proudly among the guests. These hands carry knowledge passed through generations. When we honor their work, we don't just preserve tradition, we ensure it evolves rather than disappears. The audience nodded in appreciation, including fashion industry leaders who had once dismissed sustainable practices as niche or impractical. A year ago, I named our first major collection Eid Bouv, Emergence. Tonight, with Samsara, we celebrate not just renewal, but continuity. The understanding that endings make space for beginnings, and that our stories don't break but transform. As applause filled the room, Aditi caught Rohan's gaze. His eyes held pride. Yes, but something deeper, to a partnership of equals, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. After the speeches and formal presentations, as guests began to depart, with seed paper invitations that would soon become wildflowers, Rohan found a deity in a quiet corner of the venue. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," he said, taking her hands in his. "Not here, not now, but soon. About our future together." Aditi felt her heart expand with quiet joy, not the desperate need for security she had once mistaken for love, but the peaceful certainty of having found a true companion for the journey ahead. "I look forward to that conversation," she replied. The exhibition continued for 3 weeks, drawing thousands of visitors and generating international coverage of India's sustainable fashion movement. Orders for the Samsara collection exceeded all projections, creating work for artisan communities across 5 states. More significantly, it sparked initiatives to include traditional craft education in design schools and influenced policy discussions about protecting textile heritage. 1 month after the exhibition closed, a DHI stood on the rooftop garden of the Daireen workshop. New plants grew among established ones, a living metaphor for the business she had built. Seedlings from the invitation paper had sprouted in pots along the perimeter, their tender stems reaching toward sunlight with quiet determination. Rohan joined her there at sunset. As had become their custom. Today, however, he carried a small wooden box carved by artisans from his home village. "My grandmother once told me that the strongest bonds are like well-woven fabric," he said, opening the box to reveal a ring set with a small, ethically sourced ruby. Individual threads interlaced with purpose, creating something more resilient and beautiful than any single strand could be alone. Aditi looked at the ring, then at the man offering it, a partner who valued her strength rather than feared. It, who saw her clarity as wisdom rather than simplicity. "Will you weave your story with mine?" Rohan asked. As the setting sun bathed the city in golden light, Aditi gave her answer not just to his question, but to all that had led her here. The painful endings that had created space for new beginnings. The moments of being silenced that had ultimately led her to find her voice. The journey from being defined by another to defining herself. "Yes," she said simply, the word containing worlds of meaning. Our threads belong together. Below them, the workshop was quiet for the evening, looms at rest, but ready to begin again tomorrow. Outside, Mumbai pulsed with constant activity. Here in this moment, suspended between sky and earth, past and future, the two people chose to create something beautiful together, a life patterned with purpose, rich with color and strong in its intentional design, like the lotus in Darini's logo. Aditi had pushed through dark waters to reach the surface, unfurling, not despite her struggles, but because of them, each petal a testament to resilience. Each bloom more vivid for having known the depths.